Welcome everybody to Silicon Slopes, to the conversations. It's amazing to have you. You like the food? J-Dogs today? That's awesome. Give it up for J-Dogs. I don't think they sponsored it. I think I paid for it, so free sponsorship for J-Dogs. Real quick before we bring up our guests today, we have the Hall of Fame coming up in February. It's February 4th. It's in downtown Salt Lake City at the Grand America, where we're going to celebrate incredible CEOs, entrepreneurs, leaders, creatives, everybody who's doing anything interesting in the state of Utah. Make sure you check it out. Go to halloffame.siliconslopes.com to learn more and apply. How about that? Did I say everything we needed to say there? All right. So I'm so excited about today's guest. I've known Brandon for a very long time when he started Weave, and he was working with the Gundersons, who we're going to talk about, I assume, here in a bit. And I was working with the Gundersons as well. So, but he's working on something really new, which we're going to talk about, called Previ. Please welcome a Silicon Slopes legend, Brandon Rodman. So,
not a legend.
You are a legend. What you've done in this community. I mean, Weave is a public company, to give everyone a sense, and it was this guy who started it. Let's start with Weave and what it was like to build that and lessons you've learned in that experience.
Yeah, Weave was an amazing experience, but to be honest, it felt like I was blind or in the dark the entire time, like bumping into corners, stubbing my toe over and over. It was a crazy learning experience. And we were scrappy with everything early on. So We've started from an idea that we started in 2008. In 2008, we started a call center for dental offices. And that idea, that call center, gave us the ideas for Weave. And so about 2 years later, we started to build some software, communication tools, text messaging tools, phone service, that we then launched in 2011. And between 2011 and 2014, those were the years of us just trying to sell. We'd celebrate signing 10 new customers in a month. And I remember, I think we had a goal of 30 in a month, and we took all the employees out to dinner to celebrate. We raised some friends and family funding. I learned how to spend money very quickly during those years. And yeah, so from about 2011 to 2013 was really just trying to figure out the business, and almost ran out of money multiple times. And then in 2014, we applied to Y Combinator as kind of a last-ditch effort. We had tried to raise funding locally from every single venture capitalist that would listen to us, from all the angel investors that we could get in front of, and everyone said no. We applied to 500 startups, got invited to an interview out in Mountain View, and got rejected. And so literally on like our deathbed as a company, applied to Y Combinator and got in. First Utah company to get into Y Combinator. So, and that saved the company at that time.
I remember that. That was a big deal to have the first Utah company get into Y Combinator. And then I believe another company got in, like VidPresso, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
which I'm not sure is still around anymore. But that was a huge deal. I remember like I was working at Izeni at the time where we were running Beehive Startups, and Weave was like Izeni's big client. What was it like working with the Gundersons?
So working with the Gundersons, so Gabe and Jordan specifically, and their development firm at the time called Izeni, it was a lifesaver for us. So I met Gabe and Jordan. This would have been in either late 2010 or early 2011. And we had this idea that we needed to find somebody to help us build phone service. And we were in a small office space that there were a bunch of other companies in the office space, and there was a gas leak one day. And so we all had to empty out of our offices and hang out in the parking lot. And we had seen these like two guys come in and out all the time, usually showing up when we're leaving for the day. They're notorious for working like odd hours. So, but anyway, we were standing out in the parking lot and just started talking. And they had mentioned they're software engineers. And I was like, you know, we have this idea to build phone service. Do you know anybody that knows how to build phone service? And they're like, we specialize in that. And so it was like this really just chance meeting. And after having some conversations with them, I had to go talk with my wife because the cost to have them build it, we didn't have the money as a company. And so, but we were all in. Like we thought this is a big idea. And so I went home and had to convince my wife to empty out our IRA in order to pay Izeni and the Gundersons to start building for us. So, and this isn't like things were rosy up until that point. So emptying out our retirement account was like, oh, you know, we have money in the bank. We had already burned all that money. I think we owed $20,000 on an American Express card, personal card that we were using for business expenses. So it was a big ask. And I think my wife saw my excitement and was like, fine, like, sure. But that money did not last very long. If anybody's tried to outsource engineering, it's expensive. But they, Izeni and Gabe and Jordan bought into the idea. And they kept building for us, like nonstop. And we would find a way to cut them a check for $5K every once in a while, or $10,000. But they were doing a lot more work than that. By the time we raised money coming out of Y Combinator, we owed them $200,000. And there was no paper with it. There was no contract. It was literally like an IOU. And so, like, we owe everything to them, willing to develop and keep going without getting paid. So.
And so it really took off once you went through the Y Combinator experience. And what did you learn there that allowed you to start nailing clients? It just seemed like the growth, like as soon as you guys got out of there, at least my perception of it is you really just started taking off as a company.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have money to spend on marketing and sales. So that was the biggest thing holding us back. And so when we got accepted to Y Combinator, the way that they structure things is they give you some funding, and then they tell you in 3 months you're going to be up on stage pitching to all the investors, and we want you to look good. So go grow your company right now. And so that money we got from Y Combinator went specifically to sales. And because we didn't have money before, we knew how we would spend it if we had it. And so we were able to just turn on some of these sales channels that fortunately delivered immediately. And a lot of that was, I had never traveled to a convention or some of these shows that would happen. And we'd set up a table in the back of the room and grab all these dentists as they were walking by to go to the bathroom and try to do a little demo for them. And people liked what they saw. And so that's really where the growth started taking off because of that.
And then how did the product evolve? Because it was heavily focused on dentists, but then it evolved into kind of all SMBs, right?
Yeah, it definitely has. We stayed focused on dentistry for quite a while. And it's a little misleading how a lot of people think, especially investors, think the dental industry is small. But when they dig in, they realize, okay, this market's a lot bigger. These guys have money, and they're worried about growth of their practice and retaining patients and bringing in new patients. So I think dentistry is still the core of Weave. Like, that's still their biggest part of business. I don't know for sure, but it was, I think, in either 2016 or 2017 is when we started exploring optometry, veterinary, chiropractics, more broadly in the medical space. And I know they've explored more, and I think are selling outside of that today.
Okay, so let's fast forward all the way to you left Weave, and we're going to talk about that leaving. But you went viral on LinkedIn with like this kind of long post, and there was a picture of you outside of, was it the New York Stock Exchange? Outside the New York Stock Exchange, the day Weave went public, and you weren't on that stage when Weave went public. You had left the company by then. And can you describe that day and your whole experience on exiting Weave?
Yeah. So I'll back up just a little bit, but I'll preface this with in hindsight, I am so grateful for the way things have actually transpired. Like, if you would have asked me this like 2 years ago, I probably would have been a little bit more bitter. But if you look at things, the entire journey of Weave, not only was I trying to learn how to run that business specifically, but I didn't know how to run a company. And we're trying to scale this company in hyperspeed. And like I mentioned, I felt like I was running around in the dark, running into walls left and right. And so when you get a company that's valued at $1 billion and you have a CEO who, in some respects, is doing an amazing job, in other respects, everything is new. Tomorrow, the company's bigger, there's more money than I've ever seen before. And so it's a big asset. It's a big company. There's lots of people. And it wasn't my company. I started it with a couple other people, but we took venture funding, and then it becomes other people's company as well. And so, I can see from their side, absolutely, why, we've got this company that's growing and, it's maturing. But it was hard. It's a bitter pill to swallow. One thing about me and most other founders that I've found is we think we can do it all. And when somebody tells us, I don't think you're right for this right now, we just want to prove them wrong. And I think that's needed to create something from nothing, to build a company. So that was really difficult personally to deal with. And I stayed with the company for a while on the board, and I just felt out of place. I wanted to build, and I'm not the kind of person that likes to be involved in lots of things. If you ask my wife, if I go grocery shopping, I cannot talk on the phone, I cannot do anything else, or else I'm at the grocery store for like 2 hours. So I have to zero in and focus on one thing, and I knew I was going to start another company. So I needed to step away from Weave and step off the board so that I could get that focus and that clarity. But I stepped off the board just a couple months before they IPO'd. I really wanted to be there. I think and this is all speculation, I really don't know, but I think they wanted to focus on the future of the company. And I think there's some value in that. I wish they would have honored the past a little bit more. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be on stage. I didn't want to be ringing the bell. I didn't feel like that was my spot. But my wife and I talked about it, and we said, well, if we're not being invited to the party, we can throw our own party. And so we flew out to New York, and we wanted to see the banner. We asked just random people walking by if they'd take pictures of us, and they had no idea that the company that was celebrating in there was the company that we had started. But it was hard, it was emotional. But I remember listening to a podcast where I think it was Whitney Johnson interviewing Jeremy Andrus from Traeger. And Jeremy went through a difficult time at Skullcandy. CEO, like the highest shorted stock, things like that. And then he left. And he was determined that his greatest work wasn't going to be in his 30s. And I think I had just turned 40. And I'm like, amen. Like, this isn't going to be my greatest work. This is cool. This is a cool company, cool story, but the best is yet to come. And so I think a lot of that got us through. And like, I feel like super fortunate that things happened the way that they did, even though they were hard on me and on a lot of other people. But in hindsight, it's how it was supposed to happen.
And now you're doing Previ, and it's still in beta, as I understand it. Explain what Previ is, what the idea is, and why you decided, hey, this is the great work of my life here.
So I'm going to talk about the big picture of Previ, and then I'm going to zoom in on what we're doing today, because to ultimately build the idea that we're talking about, it's going to take a long time. We're going to be asking brands and service providers to do things they've never done before. We're going to be asking Previ members and customers to do things that they haven't done before. So this is a long journey. And so the idea really, there's really two fundamental things that drove the idea for it. One was people, not employees, which I probably annoy a lot of people adding that hashtag to everything I do. But that idea of we couldn't have built Weave without everyone putting their blood, sweat, and tears into building that company. And it wasn't just the employees, but we had spouses and children bought in. They loved coming in. They were proud of where their either mom or dad worked. And it was an amazing experience. And so I fundamentally wanted to try to build something that wasn't a charity, but it could give back in a way. So that was one, kind of this people, not employees. Another fundamental thing, and this really still the highlight of my career, was in 2018, we had a killer year at Weave. We had doubled as a company. No one thought we could do that. The momentum, we were just on fire as a company, and the employees put everything they could into it to hit this goal. And when people do that, I try to get creative to over-deliver for them. And so we had a really generous end-of-year bonus pool of money. And instead of just giving everyone just cash and direct depositing it into their bank account, and then they forget, we wanted to make it something special. And so we ended up taking that money and we gave everybody a lump sum of cash, because a lot of times people just need that just to get by. They've got bills, they've got life, they've got Christmas presents, but we wanted them to remember what we did. And I bet today if you ask everybody, they won't tell you the money. They'll forget that part. They'll tell you the 15 gifts that we gave. And it was like an Oprah moment for me. So I was up on stage and clicking through like, hey, we got this for you. And we've got this for you. And by like slide 10, I'm like, should I press the clicker again? You think we got something else? And everybody's like, yeah. And so, but we were able to get these 15 gifts because we reached out to all the different companies and said, hey, we've got 300 employees. What kind of a discount will you give us if we buy 300 of these from you right now? And a lot of these businesses were like, we'll give you 50% off. We'll give you 40% off. And so it's this kind of concept of group buying, this power in numbers. And so people, not employees, and this Christmas party was this kind of idea behind Previ of how do we give back to these people. And so Previ at a high level is a new way to pay for things. We want it to be the most rewarding way to pay, but it comes directly from a paycheck. And so most people don't buy stuff directly from their paycheck. This isn't us working with individual companies to pull from payroll. This is us actually working with the payroll companies. And then it's a question, well, what can you buy? And big picture, we want you to be able to buy everything. We want this to be as big as Visa, MasterCard, American Express. We want this to be the preferred payment method. And we think the only way to do that is to make it the most rewarding. So we're targeting 10 to 20% cash back for everything, but we can't do business the way credit cards do business. Because if we do, we have their same economics. And we're going to be operating in this kind of funky 1% for this thing, 2% for this, 3% for this for the first 10 months, and have to play that game. And so we're doing business differently. So that's big picture. At a more micro level, this is the chicken and the egg problem. No one will accept Previ Pay if you don't have any members. And no members will try to use Previ Pay they can't use it anywhere. And so we had to find something that we thought could have a material impact on people's personal finances on day one. And the mission of our company is to make your hard-earned paycheck go further. Life's expensive. Inflation sucks, housing prices suck, gas prices suck. Like, life is not getting cheaper. And so, but you're working just as hard. And so we want to make that money stretch further. And so everybody has a cell phone bill. Like, you might be on your parents, you might have siblings on yours, you might be Venmoing people, you might have your own account, but everybody's got one somehow. And so we started negotiating with the cell phone carriers earlier this year, and we got T-Mobile to actually pay attention. They love this concept. And so we negotiated a deal directly with T-Mobile to be able to offer better phone service than you can get in retail at some really attractive pricing that we can offer 20% cash back on. And we are in beta right now. The small engineering team we have of 4 individuals, they are burning the midnight oil to help us build these tools. And Gabe Gunderson is actually he's our co-founder. I reached out to him. He helped us build Weave early on. I reached out to him, and he's leading these efforts for us as our CTO. But yeah, so we're in beta. We're generating quotes for people with Previ. And what's awesome is we, on average, are saving people over $1,000 a year if they use Previ. And like, that's meaningful. That's huge. So you're not getting $1,000 back from your credit card company if you're paying your cell phone bill that way. And we don't make any money off, fees, late fees, interest, things like that. That's not how we're going to make our money. We're going to do the deals with the partners, so it's beneficial to them, works with our economics, that we can offer it to our members it's almost like member special. So,
why do you think Utah is becoming such a fintech hotbed?
I have no idea.
This is relatively new, right?
Yeah, so it's new, but I think you have people like Blake Murray who had a very innovative idea, and some of these other companies, these founders that are experiencing problems in their own personal life, and then they go tackle the problem, and they start bringing talent into Utah. They start getting, maybe early product managers in their career. Now they've spent 5 years at a fintech company, and they've seen it succeed. And then these individuals know the fintech landscape, and they've got their own ideas, their own problems. So then they go out to build their own. So I think that's a huge part of it, just some innovative founders that saw an opportunity. They built successful companies, and then other people seeing opportunities. I think also a lot of VC funding is just going into fintech in general. And so the opportunity to get funded is there. And so I think there's a lot of things.
How did you think about raising money this time? Like all those VCs who said no the first time, I can't imagine they all said no this time.
It was very different a second time. So I can tell you why a lot of founders who have had some success with their first company, why they don't want to build again. It's hard going back to zero and trying to figure things out and get scrappy again. But the fundraising side, so there's a lot of things that are just as difficult. There's new problems you face, but with a little bit of success, fundraising becomes much easier. And so fundraising this time, it was not difficult in any way. Whereas with Weave, I had a spreadsheet with over 100 groups that had rejected us, and many of those rejected us multiple times. And when I raised funding, it was about a year ago. It was just a slide deck. It was just an idea. I didn't have a co-founder. I'm not a coder, so I wasn't going to be the one building it. And they really just made a bet on, okay, this idea sounds really big. We don't know what it actually turns into. Brandon's got a track record of success, so the risks are lower in some respects. Whereas then you get a brand new company, inexperienced founding team, but they have some momentum. Like, there's different risks. This is their first time. Are they going to be able to scale this? Will this turn into more? Another big part for me was I've got a chip on my shoulder. I want to do it again. And in a way, I need to do it again. The story didn't end the way I wanted it to, and I don't want to go out like that. It's kind of like, I don't know, Tom Brady. He wants to go out on top again, and he's not going to quit, even though he probably should. So anyway, so that was another part. The motivation was there. The experience for me was there. So it made fundraising really easy, which sucks for any founders out there struggling. I'm sorry. Gets easier the second time.
By the way, be thinking of questions because you can ask Brandon whatever question you want here in a sec. Who did you take money from?
So a handful of people, but primarily Sound Ventures, so Ashton Kutcher's firm, and then Ryan Smith from the Jazz and Qualtrics. My wife and I put in some money as well, and then a couple angels, so Blake Murray from Divvy, and then my brother put in some money. We had Tyler Hogue from Divvy, who runs their product, put in some money. Jason Garcia put in some money. Derek Anderson, who runs Startup Grind, put in some money. So kind of a handful of people, but a lot of people that kind of have some fintech background.
Yeah, sure.
That can give us some advice.
Yeah. Questions? Yeah. You? Yeah. You know.
So I see a lot of these.
Hang on, let's get you a mic because we're recording this.
I see a lot of these startups here, and maybe it's not just Utah. Maybe Silicon Valley is the same way, or some of these other places that have a lot of startups. But like, they start these businesses up, and then they have to leave the company. And you mentioned you didn't want to leave necessarily, but you felt like you didn't fit in. Is that just kind of how it is with startups? Like, you just kind of need a startup at some point and then leave, and let somebody else take over, or is it? Or do some people just like to do? They're kind of a serial entrepreneur.
In Utah, I think I am potentially the only founder who left a unicorn of a company. So that it's unique in that respect. But in Utah, I don't know about outside, but it's exhausting running a company. It's difficult. It stretches you. So I think you see a lot of founders, even with successful companies, eventually hand over the reins of their company, depending on how long they can go. Some founders are really in over their head. Some companies grow so fast that you can't learn at that speed. And you need people that have already seen it, that it's almost like the game slows down for you because you've seen it, you've been there. If you look in the NBA, part of the reason rookies really struggle is the game is so much faster than it was in college. And so they haven't seen it. They need the time to acclimate to it and get better. And so every situation's unique, but it's just hard. It's the big leagues. And if you take venture capital funding, that's what you're signing up for. It's the big leagues. No one's going to cry for you. You got to build something big and be ready to take all the blows that come with it.
What would you say your initial round of raising with Weave that you got 100 no's plus, your biggest mistakes in that fundraising that you learned from?
I didn't understand what venture capitalists and angel investors were really looking for. Honestly, I thought the potential of doubling your money was an amazing opportunity. And no, an angel is looking to at least 100x their money or 1,000x because they know they're going to lose money on 9 out of 10 of their investments. So understanding really what they're looking for and then knowing how to package the company that we had at that time and sell it the right way. Like, you're trying to sell the company to get money for it. And so you've got to adapt that sales pitch to your audience. and I didn't know the audience. So I think that was probably the biggest mistake. I didn't ever consider at that time that we were building a $1 billion company. And most venture capitalists, if you don't have a vision that they believe has a chance of becoming that, you won't get funded. And that's why venture capital funding is not for everybody. It is a different game if you take that funding. So you really got to know what you're asking for, because there's good, but it comes with lots and lots of risk.
By the way, I don't want to sweep this under the rug. I went to drink this water bottle and it spilled all over me.
Did we
everybody
get it
see
on
that?
video? Did we get
Like,
okay.
that was crazy. I'm like soaking wet now up here. Cynthia, sorry, go ahead.
So sorry. Thank you for taking my question, Clint. So you mentioned during your introduction that you did not want to have a nonprofit, but you wanted to give back, which is conceptually is brilliant. How important do you think it is for a company to be positioned for sale or for further funding or things of that nature, to make it more attractive, even for the employee force out there to come and work for you? How important it is that a company of any size and at any stage of growth make that a priority?
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, the question is how important or at what level of priority is it to keep your company in a position that it can sell? Like you can sell it or you can, is that kind of what you're asking?
No, I just wanted to know how important it is that a company, you mentioned that you didn't want a nonprofit, but you wanted to give back in some form to your employees or something like that. That aspect, how important it is for companies that want to position themselves into a sell or further funding or things of that nature, to have a sort of a give back or nonprofit sort of angle.
Yeah. So if you don't run a good business, it doesn't matter. And the thing is, if you're going to raise funding, honestly, venture capitalists are going to say, oh, that's cute, that's nice that you do that. But I want to see the fundamentals of the company. I want to make sure you're spitting off profits. I want to make sure your gross margins are high. I want to make sure you can afford this thing. And if you can afford, giving 1%, 2% back to charity or something like that, I want to make sure it's somehow accretive to the business. I want that to help further additional growth in the company. Most venture capitalists are probably going to look at it that way. Like, what does it do for the business? Or is it just we're giving away free money? Yeah. But from a founder perspective, it's going to be different. It's usually something from the heart. There's some desire, some reason they want to do it. And it's less about the money, it's more about the cause. So there's going to be odds there. But I still, somebody else asked me kind of a similar question. The priority number one should be build a profitable company. Then if you can do that, then you can impact people, you can help people. And it's okay to have that early on in the company, but just realize, like, if you're going to give back, like to charity, that kind of stuff, then you better run a good business.
Let's go with Joel. Then we have a few over here too that we'll get to. Yeah, I got it. We'll go to you in a sec. Joel, go ahead.
I'm fascinated with your chip on shoulder story. Some of the old guys, which I fit into the realm, they just don't want to give up. You talk about like Lance with leaving what they did at Dell and that type of thing. The motivation as we get older to be able to meet with some of the younger ones and bring them into the fold. I'm sure that's something that's motivated you, and I loved your post, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Papa P, then we'll go back here. Let's get Papa P a microphone. By the way, give it up for Papa P, former editor of Silicon Slopes, coming back.
Thank you, Clint. Not necessarily Rod. Sorry, Brandon. I'm curious, what was it about the telco space that led you eventually to T-Mobile versus all the other industries out there? And will you share what's next after the telco space?
Yeah,
From a route to market standpoint, right?
Yeah, yep. So Well, first off, again, we're asking brands and service providers to think outside of the box, to do things that they haven't done before, or do things that they may have tried in one way and it didn't work very well. And so talking with the carriers about kind of the mobile side and under this category of subscriptions and bills that we're starting first with Previ, T-Mobile bought into the vision, and it still took 6 months. We started conversations with some individuals locally. They thought it was amazing. They thought it could help them. It escalated to their managers. It escalated to VPs, got finance, legal involved, everybody. And they were willing to do something that they haven't done before because they thought that we could have a shot at doing this. And it just so turns out T-Mobile over the last couple of years has improved their 5G service. Honestly, they are the best 5G provider today. With 4G LTE, they weren't. Verizon led that. And so not only now partnering with T-Mobile, we're offering the best level of service to people, but T-Mobile also the economics, the pricing, the negotiations we're able to do with them, we're able to pass on the biggest savings to people. So not only are we getting the best service, but we're helping you keep more of your paycheck. And so that's kind of a win-win. So it was a no-brainer. It's not that we don't want to work with Verizon and AT&T. We want to work outside of the box with them. And not everybody's going to do that. And so whether we can have those conversations in the future and they're successful or not, it's not going to hold Previ back. So we're starting with your cell phone bill. We want to do other bills. Think of like streaming services. Is there a way to negotiate with them and create a package deal with them? So that falls under kind of that subscriptions side of things. Then there's travel. I'm guessing you guys like to go on trips, and if you could get 10%, 20% cash back on your flight, on your hotel, things like that, you probably wouldn't mind. So there's a travel category. There's retail. The retail industry is actually built in a way where it costs you $1 to make a product, you resell it for $2, or you wholesale it for $2, then the retailer sells it for $4. So there's a model already kind of built there that we could work with and potentially create some of those margins that we need to be able to pass on cash back. So that's why I say this is like a decade or 2 decades of building to really build this product that I think hopefully people fall in love with. And it becomes their preferred way to do things. Like I think of Costco. A lot of people, they go to Costco and they're like, I don't even need to necessarily check the brand. I know it's high quality and I know the pricing's good. And they kind of just buy. They know the experience after, if they have a bad experience, is going to be good. So it's not just about that front end, but we're also building a concierge service with this. You think of like American Express. I don't have a black card, but if anybody ever has, I'd like to talk with you about what the concierge service is like. But we use that as an example of how can we treat our members with that kind of respect and make them feel like the superstars. Because Previ, the story is really about all of you. It's about how can we build something that impacts your lives. You guys are the heroes. You guys are the ones out there building companies. You guys are the ones working hard. And so that's why I say this is like, in a way, giving back. A product that can actually help you save money, put money back in your paycheck. So,
Brandon, thank you so much. This is tremendous insight. So you mentioned there is a tension between the investor, whether it be a VC or an angel investor, and the entrepreneur, in the sense that the investor wants a lot of money back quickly, but the entrepreneur wants to grow, and become a unicorn. When do you sell? When do you start selling as an entrepreneur? Do you sell early, give money back to build and get, to build faster and better? Or do you wait until what milestone? When do you sell? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, so most venture capitalists don't want you to sell early. In fact, if you talk with anybody who invested in YouTube or Instagram, they're going to say, man, those were $500 billion companies if they would not have sold. And they lost out on tons of profits. And venture capitalists, when they deploy that money into your company, if you sell early, they have to redeploy that money into other companies. So if you were on a trajectory that could have returned all the capital and you sold early, you just created more work for them and less money. So usually they don't want you to sell early. But there's tension because as a founder, as an employee, you're going to be there long term and you know their days are numbered. A venture capitalist raises money from limited partners. So individuals or groups that invest money, give them money to then invest in your company. They have to return money back to all those people. And usually that's a 5 to 10 year cycle. So there's plenty of time for you to do it, but the days are numbered. So at some point, they want to get a return to be able to pay their limited partners back for that money. So the analogy that I've heard that's the best is like owners and renters. So would you ever if you owned a home, would you let your renters create all the rules for it, manage themselves, and then 10 years later say, here's your house back? Like, no, you would you're going to have that thing long term. So you want to make sure those investors at least are aligned with you and that you're aligned, you understand their needs, they need to get a return, but you need to build a long-term sustainable company. So you've got to work together with them, and there's always a little bit of tension, but you've got to have empathy for them, for their job, because without them, you probably wouldn't be where you are today. So, but there is naturally some tension. Sometimes it can get ugly, sometimes it's beautiful. And there's some founders that some of their best friends are their venture capitalist investors. So, yeah.
So you've mentioned that you've secured a partnership with T-Mobile for Previ. I'm curious, as you continue to seek those partners, what is your strategy or your approach to ensure that both parties win and really secure that relationship long term, and don't let it fizzle out? Because as I've done partnerships, it always seems like there's a fizzle because nobody really knows where to go next. So any insight into that would be awesome.
Yeah, so the critical thing for us is just because somebody wants to partner with us does not mean we should partner with them. We need to make sure our members actually want this thing. If they don't want it, that partner is not going to get what they want. Every partnership is selfish. They want their business to grow. And so we have to establish partnerships where we can legitimately grow their business. And if we can't, partnerships fizzle out. They're not important. So we are relentless in talking to our early members, early users, early customers. And we need to make sure they want these things. And so Previ is going to be a lot about us curating things. So again, just because somebody will partner, they want to sell through us, we're not just going to sell that stuff. We're going to be really careful and really thoughtful. And we will probably go slower than everybody wants, making sure that those partners have a good experience. Because again, it's all about the long term. If we have a couple bad partnerships early on, members are going to stop signing up. They're going to stop using it. Partners aren't going to sign up. So it really hurts us. So keeping that long-term view and then being okay moving slowly with partners, but when we get a partner, we move very quickly. And so hopefully that answers that question.
We can take one more, if anybody has one. Yeah, right here. Or we'll take two more. These two gentlemen who raised their hand.
All right, sorry, going to double dip. So my question is just generating awareness. Is that happening mostly just organic through your business development efforts? Do you guys have some type of a marketing digital strategy for that?
Yeah, right now it is just friends and family that we're reaching out to because some of the things we're building are very early beta and they error out a lot. And so we want to make sure we need our friends' help to test these things out, to then squash the bugs, that kind of stuff. So we're being really careful in that aspect, but things are looking really, really good. So we do have a wait list on our website, and the plan is to start attacking that pretty soon here, like within the next probably 2 to 4 weeks to start going after that. And there's quite a bit of people on there. That's exciting. One of the other angles for Previ is to actually go to employers. So with T-Mobile, we're able to go to employers and say, hey, would you want to offer cell phone service as a benefit to your employees? And I've pitched to 20 different CEOs, and all 20 said, this is a no-brainer. Like, we would absolutely offer this. So there's another angle for growth. We're aware of some universities that offer kind of cell phone plans to students or employees, and sometimes to alumni. And like, these things are a pain in the butt to manage. And so that's another growth channel. Go to universities. Do you want to offer something to your students, employees, and alumni? We haven't even tapped into digital, and we don't have any salespeople. But the few people that we have onboarded with Previ, they are like just naturally sending us people. Their parents, their siblings. I had somebody this morning text over all of the names and phone numbers of everybody on his sales team. He's a VP of sales at a small company. And so word of mouth is going to be a big driver here. And really, this is the wedge. If we can get lots of people on this, then conversations with all the other cool brands, the cool things you guys want, the things you pay for, become much easier. And so we're going to stay focused kind of in this spot for a little while. So.
All right, last one right here.
As you're growing, there comes a time in all CEOs' lives when you realize, okay, I'm really stupid about this area of the business. And you have to admit and say, there's smarter people than me that can solve this problem, right? It's kind of an epiphany from my experience. How did you have that first big moment when you realized, I really have to find someone else to do this specific part of my business? And how did you go about dealing with, it's not failure, but it probably felt like failure?
Yeah, maybe it's just the self-awareness. Some people it comes more naturally, more easier to. Some it doesn't. I've always felt like, for me personally, I'm good at the early stuff, the scrappy, and I'm good at maybe inspiring people, but I'm a horrible manager. I'm horrible at following process, building process. Anybody that worked at Weave, like, I'm sorry, because I would reach out to them, like, random times of the day, in the evening, hey, I need this. And they're like, well, if you just do this, this, and this, it's right here. We've built everything. And I'm like, okay, thanks for what I needed. And then I'd forget about it. And so for me, it kind of just came naturally. I know what I'm good at and what I suck at. I know what I can do just early, and I know for sure there are people better than me at all these things. At Weave, it was a little bit more difficult. Like, finding those people, getting them to actually be able to come and join Weave, recruiting them. I think the difficult thing right now is I want to jump to all them right now. I want to hire all of them right now. And you just can't do that in an early stage company that's in beta, hasn't fully launched, because it increases your burn exponentially and reduces your runway. So that's the challenge this time for me. I know all the people that are world class, and I want them to come now, but I can't afford them. So it's one of those things. I think everybody in this room should just say, if I'm running a company, there are people better than me at everything I'm doing, and I need to be okay with that. There's a role that I play. I need to figure that role out, and then I need to delegate everything else I possibly can. Because if you want to build a big successful company, that's what it's going to take. So my goal is to give up everything I possibly can at Previ when the time's right, to give it up to other people.
Okay, one thing I'm not good at is opening a water bottle and not spilling all over myself. So just quick reminder, I didn't pee my pants. I literally just dumped a bunch of water. Like when I stand up here, that's what you're going to see. So that's the first thing. Second, please give it up to Brandon Rodman, Previ.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all so much for coming.